I've always been interested in science, but I think the thing that really sparked my wanting to be a scientist was I read the biography of Marie Curie when I was like 7 years old, and so I read it, and I read it not only once, but I read it twice, and I decided then that I wanted to grow up and win a Nobel Prize, because Marie Curie was the first woman to win 2 Nobel Prizes, the Nobel Prize in Physics and the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. So from a little child, I guess I sort of worshipped Marie Curie, because back then there was no television. Television hadn't been invented yet. There was no stimulus anywhere, because there were no women's science teachers. There were no information about careers for women, because when I started school, let's see, I graduated in 1960, so that would have meant 12 years earlier. I started to school, and that would have been in 1948. So when you think about it, I just showed you this story about the Gilbert chemistry set in 1954. Well, remember, I started to school before then. And so, but I just grew up, and I always had a curiosity about things. And so I guess it sparked me. And then finally, what really culminated my opportunity was I had a good science teacher in 8th grade, and then I started high school in 1956. And at the beginning of the school, myself and 16 boys signed a petition, because the school we were going to didn't offer physics, and I knew I wanted to take physics because Marie Curie, physics. And so I signed a petition with the 16 boys to offer a physics course at my high school my senior year. And so sure enough, they began planning to offer physics my senior year. So I had to take chemistry my junior year, because they wouldn't let you take 2 science courses in the same year. So I took chemistry in my junior year, and the teacher would always pick. I was a good student because I was really good in math in elementary, because I would listen. I went to a 1-room school, and all 8 grades were in 1 room. And so I'd watch, so we had like 10 minutes for each class. So I would do my class, and then I'd do the assignment, and then I'd listen to all the others. And I learned the math with all the other kids. So on Fridays, they used to have math contests. And even when I was really young, I'd get up there and I'd compete with the 8th graders. And I was really good in math. So when I started high school, I signed the petition. And then they told me I had to take chemistry my junior year. I took it, and then my high school chemistry teacher would pick 2 students out of the class. And they wanted us to study the whole book and complete the book by January, so we could attend the state chemistry contest and participate in the academic contests. And so I did. I finished the book by January. And back then, I went to school in eastern Oklahoma, over at Shakota, Oklahoma. And we went to southeastern Oklahoma State University, is where we went for the academic contests. And so I went, and I won. I won first place in the whole state contest. Well, that was, remember, I started school in 1956. Guess what happened? On October the 4th, 1957, Russia launched Sputnik. And it changed forever my life, because suddenly the whole government, the whole U.S. said we're behind in they didn't call it STEM then, they called it in the science race. And so they asked, they started, the president actually gave an ultimatum to the National Science Foundation, which by the way was created in 1950. They asked them to create programs for young people to try to get more young people to go into science. And so they created, National Science Foundation created summer academies for high school students. And in I'm sure that my chemistry teacher, because I took chemistry my junior year, which would have been 58, and after I won that contest, he entered me, he sent in my application for the National Science Foundation Summer Academy. It was in chemical engineering, Oklahoma High School Institute for Chemical Engineers. And ta-da, I was selected. We didn't have a telephone at home. I was a country kid. I grew up picking cotton and working in the fields. And so they got me out of history class and called me to the phone like in 1st of March. No, 1st of March, like the end of February, 1st of March, something like that, and told me that I'd been accepted to Summer Academy. And I said, I'll have to ask my daddy. And so I go home and ask my daddy. And my mom had her arm around me. And so I told Dad, I said, Dad, I've been accepted for a 6-week program in chemical engineering at Oklahoma State University. And it won't cost me anything. They pay all my expenses. And it'll be a great opportunity for me. And he said, is this important to you? And I said, yes, sir, it is. And my mom shook her head. And my dad said, okay, you can go. And so I attended that 6-week summer academy. There were 20 boys and 6 girls, 26 of us in the whole United States. There were 2 girls from Oklahoma. There was a girl from New York and a girl from California and 2 from Arizona. So we 6 girls, and the kids were all from all over the United States that came to this. So we spent 6 weeks learning about chemical engineering and about lots of other things, because I remember we even dissected an unborn baby pig because they wanted to introduce us to lots of science. And I got to go to a Quonset hut, and I had to wear a radiation badge and all this. And really, really exciting. I thought, oh, Marie Curie coming to life. And so anyway, I went to that 6-week summer academy and came home with a slide rule with my name engraved on it and never looked back, because that changed my life forever, because then I got scholarships to go on in chemical engineering. So that's longer than I know you wanted, but that's my story of how I became a scientist.
No, I think that's really amazing. I think it kind of puts into perspective like why like you do like these summer camps, why you do all these outreach things, because it's kind of continuing like that opportunity you got way back then.
I want to pass it on, because you're exactly right. That's why I'm such a passionate advocate for summer academies. And as you probably know, I already have funding for next summer for both of them, which will be 36 summer academies I will have done, all funded, cost none of the kids anything to attend, and because it changed my life, and so I want to change lives of others.
That's honestly really amazing. Yeah. I think the saddest part of that entire story is how you didn't go into physics or math.
Well, I'm not sure why I didn't go to physics. I had a good physics teacher, but I had a really good chemistry teacher in high school, and then the chemical engineering. And I finished, like I said, the chemistry book by January. And I don't know, I was good at chemistry. I was good at physics too. And and math, I don't think I had good math teachers in college. I don't know. I don't feel like I did. I had a pretty good physics teacher, but I had lots of good chemistry teachers, and I don't know, I was just a total advocate for chemistry. Got my first degree in chemical engineering and then couldn't get a job. That was my first. Someone asked me, I spoke last weekend at Midwestern University. I was their senior seminar speaker, and one of the boys asked me, said, did you ever have any setbacks or anything that you felt was trying to hold you back? And I said, oh yes, many times. And he said, well, how did you handle it? And I said, I just worked harder, because that's what you have to do. If things don't go your way, you just work harder. You work harder, and that's what I've always tried to do here at Cameron. When the rest of the people are gone home for the day, I'm many times here still working at night. But I don't know, I just loved chemistry from the very beginning, and I loved teaching it, so it was the right thing for me to do, I think. I like the physics part, but it doesn't turn me on the way chemistry does.
I was going to say, I definitely understand that, and that honestly perfectly segued into kind of my next question there, which is, I know you just talked about like how like with setbacks, stuff like that, you just kind of like push harder. And so that kind of leads to my next question there, which is, I know a lot of scientists, since this field really just has you hit brick walls a lot of the time, there's a lot of self-doubt, as in like, can I do this? Am I able to? And so I want to ask, what's kind of like your thought process when you kind of get hit with those kind of like moments where you're unsure if you're able to?
I never felt like that I couldn't do it. I knew I could. It was just that I realized that there were barriers for women from the very beginning, just like there have been barriers for minorities and for other interest groups. But I knew I could do it. I was good. I was good at what I did, and I knew I'd be a good teacher. I would have been a good engineer. I got to go to a summer internship between my junior and senior year, but I don't know. I sent out 40 resumes, and nobody would hire me. They weren't ready for women back then, and so I went to Plan B. I decided, okay, if I can't get a job I had a lot of chemistry and a lot of physics, and so I found out that I could get a degree in chemical education in 1 year. And so I went to school at Northeastern, and they let me complete, because I had so many classes, they let me count my chemical engineering as physics or chemistry. So I graduated with a double degree in physics and chemistry, and started teaching. And I taught a year in high school. And someday I'll write that story. It's my up the down staircase story about what it's like to be young, single, and trying to teach a bunch of really ruffian high school students. And the first year of integration, by the way. And that's another story I could tell you. I could do a whole interview on what it was like. My class at Shakota High School was the first class to integrate. Not only were we the first to integrate, you know what that means, to integrate with African Americans.
Yeah.
And we were the first school in the state of Oklahoma. And that's another story I won't try to tell you at this point. But it worked out really, really well. And it was in 1956. We had 7 African Americans that entered my class, and a couple of those were in my physics class. And they were good students. But they always, when we went back for the reunion, they always said the reason it worked is I tutored them all through math, because they didn't have a good math background. And I just love math, and you got to have math to do physics or chemistry, either one. And so, anyway, then when I taught at Muskogee, that was the first year of integration. It was a bad, bad time, and a lot of drugs, and I had a really, really bad year, which culminated in, I could tell lots of things, but I know we don't have time in 15 minutes, but what actually ended my teaching career was I stayed with my parents. I was saving money. They lived 20 miles from Muskogee, and I started home one day, and they had let the air out of my tires, stole my distributor cap, stole my spark plugs, because I parked in the student parking lot, because the administration, when I checked in, they said, well, you look young. We'll just put you in the student parking lot. Big, big mistake. So I went out one day to get in my car, started driving my car towards Shakota, 20 miles away, got about, maybe 2 or 3 miles outside of town. My car started smoking. And I stopped the car immediately, grabbed my books and my purse, and ran as fast as I could. I got about probably 100 feet from my car, and the car blew to smithereens, burst into flames, and so evidently they had planted a bomb in my car. And that was the end of my teaching career. So that was great. That was a great stimulus to go back to school and get a higher degree. So that at the end of that year, I started back to school at OSU, and I really was going to get a degree in math, because at that time there was this big push for modern math, and they wanted people to do modern math. Well, I never had a course in modern math, so I went to school at OSU and I took all these courses, and I thought, this is kind of cool stuff. Because that's when they introduced Venn diagrams. I don't know if you know what all that is, but anyway, was modern math. And I had a roommate who I had taught with at Muskogee, and she said she got a teaching assistantship to go on for a master's, and they were going to pay her. And I said, you mean they pay you to go to graduate school? And I went over and applied, and they said, we've given all of them out in math. So, ta-da, I walked across the campus to the chemistry department, walked into Dr. Dermer's office, and I said, Dr. Dermer, I want to get a master's in chemistry, but I need money because I need support. I don't want to have to, my parents, I don't want to ask any more from them. So he said, sign on the dotted line, and that was how I made the next decision to go on and get a master's. And so that's, I got the master's degree, and couldn't get a job. I thought I wanted to go into industry because I was sort of down on education at that point. Couldn't get a job. And so I walked into at the end of the 3 years, I had been a teaching assistant while I was at OSU. And I went in to see my major professor, and he said, Ann, what are you going to do when you finish? And I said, well, I sent out 40 resumes again, and no response. And he said, why don't you teach? He said, you're a wonderful teacher. He picks up the phone before I could do anything, and he called Cameron. And he talked to the president. He was a former president of Cameron, the guy that was my major professor there. His name was Colonel Breedlove. And he said, you should teach. He called the president. He said, I have a person here you really need to have on your faculty at Cameron. He said, I know you guys are expanding to become a 4-year school. It went from a junior college to a 4-year school. And they would graduate their first graduates in 1970. Well, that was in 69. And so the president said, just a minute and I'll patch you through to the chemistry department. Oh, that's another story. He patched me through to Dr. Val, who was the chair of the chemistry department. And this is simply serendipity. I had been his organic chemistry teacher the summer before, because I taught organic chemistry at OSU. And I had been his teacher in the lab. Of course, he remembered me. And evidently, he liked what he remembered. He drove to OSU the next day, and I signed a contract. And I had never been to Lawton in my life. I'd never been to a military town. I had no idea what I was getting into. Ta-da. And 56 years later, here I am still at Cameron.
No, we appreciate you being here. It's honestly, I like to tell a lot of people when I'm tutoring them and stuff like that, just like all the stuff here and like just like the extremely amazing faculty we have. So
well, thank you. It's been an amazing experience for me, and like I said, I love the fact that maybe I have a small part in molding lives and creating future scientists. As a matter of fact, this Saturday we do the ChemQuest, the program for little sixth graders, and so I sent out the announcements. It's my summer academy follow-up activity. So I sent out the notice to all my summer academy students from last summer, and yesterday I got a call, and the call was from a mother who her husband is on the engineering faculty at OSU, and their daughter came last summer to the summer academy. Well, they have a son who's 6th grade, and they are she asked me if their son could come. He met me when, at the end of the year I have this dinner for the parents and for the students at closing day. We launch the rockets, and we do the PowerPoint presentations and do all the things the last day. And I invite the parents, and they always ask me how come it costs so much, because I have it catered by TEDS, and I said because I want the little kids and the parents to have a good experience and good memories of Cameron. And so they called, and they want to bring their son, who's 6th grade, from Stillwater, Oklahoma, down here to Lawton this Saturday to participate in our I call it our STEM program. It's a program to encourage 6th graders to go into science called ChemQuest. And so they're bringing him this Saturday. 300, it's a 3-hour drive. It's 168 miles from here to Stillwater. And they're bringing their son that far. So I said, do they not do this at OSU? Does nobody do this but me? So anyway, he's coming this Saturday. So I'm kind of excited about it because the state regents have asked us what kind of outreach programs we do here at Cameron, and so this is one. In the spring we do one in physics called PhysQuest. I think you probably helped with it before. So anyway, yeah, I think I've had an amazing career and lots of opportunities to work with young people and maybe convince them that STEM is the way to go.
Honestly, I think it's all really, really amazing. And so I'm going to go ahead and push on to sort of my last question, which I guess you've probably answered, I think, this about a million times, if not explicitly, which is, what advice do you have for new scientists or people who are aspiring to be scientists?
Well, if they like science, I encourage them because there's so many opportunities. You know, every time I remember thinking, you know, it's all been done. There have been so many discoveries. And since I've come here, I don't know how many times I've said, I'm so glad that I've lived this long, that I have an infrared, an Fourier transform, FTIR down there, that I can put a piece of fiber on the diamond and bounce a beam off of it. And you were there that summer, I think. We had this kid give me a piece of skin, and we bounced the beam, and I got an infrared spectra of human skin. and it doesn't change. It keeps on going. And so Dr. Ebekai, I was showing him how to use the NMR earlier this week. We have a tabletop NMR. Well, when I started, the NMR was invented in the 40s, late 40s. And so when I came along, my NMR was as big as this much of the room, and I spent my day, that's where I lived, in that lab, and I would get up and shim it every day. And now I have a microwave reactor where I can do chemical reactions in 10 minutes that used to take 14 hours. So it's a really exciting time to be a scientist because every time I think that we've discovered it all, then we're doing something even better. And now we're doing AI, artificial intelligence, to do a lot of things. So I don't think it's going to slow down. I think there's always going to be exciting times for people like me because, like I said, I never dreamed in my lifetime I would see so many changes and how exciting it has been. You know, even when I remember when the liquid crystal was first invented, you know, you touch it and it's chemistry. And the transistor, I remember my first transistor radio, well, that's physics, you know, and I feel so blessed to have grown up in the era when I've grown up as a scientist. But I think the younger people are going to have this same experience because I don't think it's going to change. We're just getting better. We're getting smaller. We're getting nano. We're getting so small and being able to do so many things. And it's such an exciting time. And I don't know if you heard the story or not about this young man. We did the infrared of human skin. And all the class was standing there, all those 24 kids were standing there. His skin was peeling off. He said, Dr. Nalley, have you ever done an infrared of human skin? And I said, no, Micah, I've never had anybody volunteer to peel off their skin and let me run it on the instrument. And he had a sunburn, so he just reached back, peeled off the skin, handed it to me, and I ran it. And all these 24 kids stood there. Well, I had just run the protein out of milk just a few minutes before because I isolate the casein out of milk. And he could see the similarity. All of them could see the similarity between the peaks in the protein in milk and the protein in skin. He came back that fall to do the program for ChemQuest, which we're doing on Saturday. And he said, Dr. Nalley, guess what I have hanging on my wall? And I said, I don't know, Micah, what do you have? He said, my mother framed my infrared of my human skin. And he said, I wake up every morning and I see my human skin hanging on my bedroom wall. Can you imagine what kind of inspiration this must be for a young person who thinks he wants to go into science? And it's not going to change because when I first came to Cameron, when we ran an infrared, it took 30 minutes to run one IR. And our building was the old Cetus building, and there was another building next to it, and our IR was over there. So I would teach organic, we would run over and put on an IR, and so we could only run like 3 or 4 IRs during the whole organic class. So the whole class did not get to run it because it took so long. Now we can run it. I do 8 scans. That's 8 seconds. In 8 seconds, I can run an infrared that used to take 30 minutes. And it just keeps on going and going and going. So I feel so blessed to live in this life and to have observed all the changes. And you guys are going to see it. And look now what we can do. We can correct the eye with a laser and have it see again. It's perfect vision, 40/40. We can do major surgery with a laser without ever cutting the skin. So there's been, so anyway, I just think it's really an exciting time to live in. And I think the younger people are going to see the same thing. Because like I said, I never dreamed in my lifetime I would see this. And I love it. I love living the life I've lived and being able to celebrate all the wonderful changes in chemistry and physics and all the sciences. So yeah, I would say for young people, it's a good time to be a scientist.